So a while back, I was complaining on the podcast that I do, something about tracking, and somebody said, you got to use the Coremelt. And somebody heard it, Ian, somebody heard it and sends me an email, says, hey, Chris, would you like to try this? And I was so busy, and I was like, oh, to be honest with you, I'm not good at learning software. So I let it slide, and then something came up, and I was like, okay, I set aside the morning. I was like, I'm gonna learn this software. And I sat down, and I went click, 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 by about like 9:10, I was a master at Coremelt. So we're excited. Ian's got a couple slides, and then we're gonna actually do some tracking and stuff. So Ian, it's all yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm an Apple certified trainer. I've been doing the teaching for Coremelt for a while, and I'm from Brisbane, so we're having a bit of an Australian theme, and anyone who asks good questions gets koalas. So I encourage good questions later on. You know these little koalas, they click onto things? Anyway, so we're going to have a look through this. There we go. Excellent. So we've got 3 products that we're actually focusing on at the booth, and we are still at the booth. There's Roger's there now, Roger Bolton, who runs the company. We've got SliceX, which is based on Mocha tracking. So it's a planar tracking engine, but you don't have to have the full-on interface of Mocha. It's slightly simpler, but it's the same engine. It's very capable. SliceX lets you change a shape so that you add the color, you add a blur, you add a sharpen, you add a glow. Sharpening and glow are new in a free update, which was released recently. We've also got TrackX. And TrackX is the same engine, but lets you add things to the shot. So if you want to do a screen replacement, you can do that without leaving the Final Cut timeline. If you want to add track text, so you track somebody walking through a shot, that's fine, that's TrackX. And in the new free update, we've got added flares, so you can have a lot of fun with lens flares, and they're not all tacky. You don't have to think, oh, lens flares, it's the page curls of our current era. But no, they're actually nice. And you can also keep a presenter in the middle of the frame, which is really handy. If they were to move around and you had a little shot where someone moving around, you can just make them stand stock still, which is really handy. Okay, and I'm also going to show you Lock and Load. Lock and Load's been around for a while, even back in Final Cut 7, and look, it even works on the dark side in Premiere, but it's better than SmoothCam and Warp Stabilizer, and it's faster. So I'll show you that. I've got a few nice demos. All right, let's look at some demos. All right, so here we've got a timeline with a whole heap of things applied, but I'm going to show you this example. If this was an original shot, which it's a handheld shot, then that's what SmoothCam does. And you see it gets a slightly warpy stuff going on in the background. Well, Lock and Load will track faster than that and produce that result. So you don't have to go and do a big nasty stabilize. Here's another example, driving around Hoover Dam. This is the original shot. This is what SmoothCam does, and you can still produces that slight warping in the background. It can't quite remove that. But Lock and Load does a really nice job. So it's not expensive either. It's on sale for 79 bucks at the moment. And it's 40% quicker than the built-in stabilizer, and it's as easy to apply as dragging an effect on and then pressing track motion. So it's already been tracked on this one. You just press the track motion button. It'll go about, it'll run about 30, 40% of the runtime of the clip. It can be really, really fast. And then you just play it back in real time.
It looked like there was a speed artifact in there. Maybe it was in the original clip.
It may be actually because this is all shot at 25 frames a second and we're at some weird frame rate here. But yeah, no, if you want to see it completely smooth, come to the booth. It is all completely smooth. I should apologize in advance if anything does crash or anything. It shouldn't. There will be an update on Monday with a new secret trick, which will be my one more thing at the end, but apologies at the end. Okay, so Lock and Load, really nice, really effective. It works well, but it has been around for a while. It's now just faster. So if you have a dual GPU Mac Pro, of course, it's now accelerated for that as well, which is great. All right, now the other stuff, which is the big exciting stuff, which Apple's been talking about a lot because it was used in Focus, is SliceX and TrackX. So here's some of the new stuff. that cup of noodles wasn't that sharp. That was actually pretty soft. And if I come back, you'll see that even though the noodles move in shot, they have actually been tracked. Now, you've got all kinds of different tools you can use to make that track and all kinds of controls on the side. So this is unsharp. We've chosen the unsharp method for this. But you could do sharpen or sharpen luminance. You've got the unsharp radius, and you've got the shape softness for how soft you want the edge of the mask to be. And it's really straightforward to track that, and I will show that soon. But I want to show you could maybe bring some pop to somebody's eyes really pretty easily. You could add a glow to somebody's eyes. That's 2 separate instances, 1 on each eye. That's really straightforward. And there's a glow added to a Honda logo. So this is a really common one you might want to do. Just pixelate somebody's face even as they move around. That's no problem at all. That's really, really simple to do. Okay, here's an interesting one. You can select an area of a shot and color correct it. So this is very much getting into, resolve territory. Now that selection there, the bit which has been corrected is actually her lips. And if you want to do something fancy like that, you're getting into rotoscoping territory. And yeah, you can track most of it, but you'll have to keyframe some of the points as you go along. It's not that hard. This will take a couple of minutes to do accurately, but it does work really well. The thing is that her mouth changes shape as it moves around, so you have to put in a few new points and then move them around a little bit. But most of the time, depending on what you want to do, it's just simply push and track. And we'll get to that soon. I just want to show you through what this stuff does. All right, that's with an additional light thrown in. This is relighting. You see on the side of her face there? It wasn't that bright in the previous shot. But you can get away with that. So if someone was missing a light, then feel free to fix it in post. All right, track X. So we're adding stuff to the shot now. We've tracked her headphones. And we've added a flare. This is track flare complex. So there's separate elements which will move depending on where they're positioned in the shot. And there's all kinds of different flares available. This is the simple flare, so you can choose to fade it up and fade it down and spin it around if you want. And of course, for each of these, there are lots and lots of different kinds of flares that you can use. So this is a 4-point star, but when we get a green LED or solar spiky, and maybe I'd make it spin really fast and chuck the flare up really big, because I want it to be a great big ball of flame. Why not? And I've got keyframes on this, so you can keyframe this just like you can with any Final Cut effect. You can do all kinds of things. Now this one was an interesting one. You can see at the beginning of this, I've tracked a little rectangle on the side of the watch. And the watch is going to spin around. So what happens when the area that it's tracking actually disappears? Well, weirdly, it actually went jerk, jerk, jerk up to the top. But because you can smooth the track out, you can even out the distance between jerky spots. You can see it's got almost nothing left, but you can produce some really nice effects. So even a bad track, and sometimes, you get bad tracks, you can get some great results out of it. There's the Honda logo again. This time we'll get a little bit of a thing on there. It is doing a little tick with the frame rate of the project, but that's okay. There's a real flare on the middle and a fake flare on the top. And another different kind of flare. So I think I'm going to show you how these things actually work. There's a blur on that logo, not terribly blurred. But what happens if I take out the existing track flare complex and I come back to the clip? So for all of the C2 Slice X categories, they are down here in effects. But you can find the new flares in C2 Track X also in effects. The other Track X things are actually hiding in generators. So that's where you'd get the rest of them. So I'll take you through that workflow in a sec. So with Track Flare Complex, I'm just going to drag it onto the clip. And I just need to use one of my tools to decide which bit I want to track. Now, this basic tool does circles and squares. You've also got a polygon tool, a Bezier tool, and a freeform tool. Now, if you're doing something complicated and you think you're going to keyframe it, use the Bezier tool. Don't use the freeform tool, because you'll want to control exactly where you want to put the keyframe points on the shape. You don't want to have 10,000 points, and you won't get that many with freeform, but Bezier is the tool to use. For this, though, I just want a circle. So I draw a circle over the bit I want to track. I'll go quickly over that, and I press this button, which is track forward. Now, if you're doing this in Mocha, you've got to export things, and it's a little bit jankier than this. I guess it's a lot more complicated, and sure, there are some things you'll still want to go to Mocha Pro for, but that's done. And it's going to spin around in an attractive way. And I can come back. I'm just going to zoom in a bit on the timeline here. Cool. You can change that in all kinds of ways. Let's go with the purple-blue anamorphic. Any J.J. Abrams fans? And look, if the track's done, right? If that's in slightly the wrong place, I can still move that around in relation to the track just by picking it up and dragging it. The track's not going to move. It's still going to move in the same position within the video, but I can finesse what it looks like. And similarly, if this was a blur or something, I could have tracked it with one shape and then changed it for another shape, but keep the track. So I could blur a very particular area, even though I've actually done the track on something else.
Ian, just to clarify that, so if you've used one of the other trackers, you can attach a flare track to that, is that what you're saying?
Well, not quite. What I mean is if I'd used the circle to track something, I could switch it for the Bezier shape later. Right. Whatever shape you've used defined as what is the area it uses to make the track, but you can change your mind after the track's been made.
I think that was a pretty good question.
No, it's a good question, but there's another answer to that question.
Do I get a bear?
You do get a bear. Have a bear. All right. The other thing that you might want to know is that, yes, if you've spent a long time building a track, like say I've done a really difficult track on the lips and you want to apply that in a different way, like say you want to blur it or pixelate it rather than color change, you can option click and copy, and then on another instance attached to the same media, or then you can paste the track data and the shape or just the track data. So you only have to do tricky tracks once, but a lot of tracks are really simple. All right, let's look at something a little bit more challenging. This is another little demo we've got here, which is me in the middle of the frame. Now, I've turned all the effects off, but as you can see, I will move around in a moment. Has anyone ever worked with talent who have done this a little bit? Okay. They're annoying. They're very annoying. I did this on purpose. I'd like it to be known. This is not just random video I managed to find at home. Okay, so what you can do, I'll just flick this across to the source. If you look at this option, you can draw a track around some part of the presenter. And it's got instructions. There's draw your shape and then press track and then switch the output to lock down. Now, it's a good idea to go around the collar. If you go around the top of the head and they like tilting their head, then you could have a bit of an interesting track you get there from that. But you might have to do that. I'm thinking maybe if you're dealing with sign language, you can have hands moving in front of the collar all the time. You might have to go with something else. So you flick it to lock down. I've done the track on this one. And now you'll see that I won't move, but the background will. So this is like stabilization in reverse. Now, well, you apply a keyer, ideally. That works really well. So you'd apply a keyer, and then you apply just the Final Cut transform, and maybe move it over to the left or the right. It turns out the background generator I've used is from the other set of effects that we've got, V2, and we don't have the license on here, hence the trial expired on the background. But yeah, if you wanted a presenter who can happily move around, just stick their text or their presentation notes, whatever, on the left-hand side, then it doesn't matter how much they moved around. And that's really good. That makes life a bit easier. To give you an example of what that's doing, if I apply the same thing to this extremely and intentionally wobbly shot of a phone, then you'll see it will go bang, and that's what it's doing. So if you haven't keyed, or if you can't key, then either only move it horizontally, and then you can crop the edges off, but it is moving in on all sides. So a few other things you can do with SliceX and TrackX. You can do pack replacement. So if you've, and yeah, please forgive the jerkiness. That seems to be a frame rate mismatch, but that works really well. Those are Photoshop files. You can do the IKEA Fight Club experience. You can use Ripple callouts. Any Ripple fans, Ripple callouts, you can attach most of those. You don't have to replace squares. You can replace a circle if you want to. This one's interesting. A little hard to see there, but there is actually a lamppost in front of the thing we've replaced. So you can add a mask that goes in front of the thing you replace if you want to do that. You can get some really fancy text going on the tops of buildings. This is one of my favorites. Just track the top of each building, attach text. That's one of the modules, built-in text. You can even, again, that's another sneaky one, mask in front with an animated mask so that your titles can go behind real-world objects if you want to. And of course, why not replace a framed picture of New York with moving pictures of New York? Because that's, so anytime you've got a picture, here we go. All right, so back to live demos. This is an iPad screen replacement, obviously the kind of thing you want to be able to do. And so it'll start out with insert layer. And this one took a little while to track. I tracked it just with the 4 corner points. Turns out that's not the best thing to do all the time. If you've got reflections on your screen, it's not tracking the corner points because it's not a point tracker. It's a planar tracker. It's tracking the detail within the points. So if that's changing all the time, that's when you're going to get not the best track. This one's actually okay, but it just moves a little bit. So I got a better track without having to keyframe it at all by going around the edges and selecting the frame around it because there's not so much reflection in there. So you'll see there, it doesn't meet at the corner. Okay, so that's a really good trick to know if you want to, if you weren't planning the shot to replace the vision. Because if you've got moving stuff on a screen, that's going to be pretty hard to track. You would definitely want to track the edge in that case. And you see you've got these 3 ways to work when you've got track layer. You've got the track itself and whatever's describing the shape you use to track. You've got the surface, which is separate and doesn't actually have to be in the same place. And then you've got the mask, if you want to go define a mask in there as well.
And if you were planning to replace that, would you put a piece of tape or something on the, would you mark it with something specific?
Look, you see, that's such a good question. Exactly, yes. Put a bit of paper on the thing. You could put little crosses, but they're still going to be, you know, quite reflective on the regular screen. So yeah, cover it up if you're worried about that. But yes, you can do that. So another example of putting stuff on the screen or fading something in over time.
Even with those reflections, it was only tracking the paper, correct? Is that...
Yeah, yep. So that one is tracking the paper, but then the surface is much bigger than that. So yeah, there's certainly a lot more to this. There's some quite nice advanced tricks in there. But you can do something like this. So it's tracking the skier and putting a counter on him. Now, that one's a bit of an interesting example because the track we got out of this was fairly jerky, and I didn't want that effect. So what I did for this one is I went to the little tracking toolbar there and pressed this button, which is your track options. So the tracking options have a whole heap of extra little things. You can track with different models, so you don't have to track with translate, scale, rotate. You can track in perspective, and different particular options will come on with different ones as defaults. You've got tracking quality, drift compensation. Really interesting one there, track depth, which we don't have time to go into, but if you were using this to replace a green screen and build a virtual set behind someone, so you're shooting on not just green screen, but green screen with crosses, then you'd build a track with the crosses, put that underneath the keyed out person, and then you can adjust the track depth, and then it shows how much they're going to actually, the background is going to move, basically how far away the virtual set is from the foreground. So track depth allows you to do that. But for this one, I've both smoothed out the track, so it smooths it out, makes it more even, and I've added motion blur. So what that means is that in this one, whenever it moves kind of quickly, you'll see that, see the text is getting a little bit softer there? I can crank it up if it's not too obvious. There we go, that's a bit softer. So you can have motion blur. Yes.
If you adjust the track options, does that require that you retrack, or is it using the tracking
Nope.
data?
Uses the tracking data, averages it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Koala? You are Australian, but... Sorry. He's lying. We only eat kangaroos on toast. Okay, and we've got other things as well. Some simple options like that, where you add text.
I did not. I've
sorry.
never noticed this one yet. The track flares.
Track flare. The flares are new. The glows and sharpens are new. If you do real estate, you can add text to things in the shots. There's all kinds of fun things here.
I love these. Effects packages that are like, it's like a little toolkit. There's all kinds of little things, and it's one of those things you got to get into it and stuff. And I got to tell you, most of what I do is just the simple tracker, and I use it for a ton of stuff. Now, I've also seen demos where, with the added shape masks in Final Cut 10.2 that all filters have, you can use those in conjunction with Track X, right? Yeah. It's probably too deep to go into now because we're running a little late, but it'd be great. Is there a great tutorial that shows you? Well, probably not, because it's new to 10.2. We should make that.
Okay, the 10.2 things, there's a couple of things, just I'll go briefly. You can add masks to things in 10.2, but they're not freeform masks. You can add a freeform mask to things in 10.2, but not to an effect, only to a whole clip. We have a thing which does that already, which is in SliceX called Shape Mask Layer. The downside of the Final Cut built-in ones is they're not trackable. So if you want a trackable mask, then SliceX is what you want. Now, the one more thing I promised, and I won't be too long about this, and I won't show you how to do it because we have a tutorial which is on our website right now, but this is kind of the secret sauce. Does anyone use third-party color correction plugins like Color Finale or Colorista or anything like that? Well, we figured out that if you were super smart about the way you built something in Motion, you can right-click on their plugins, open them up in Motion, rearrange a few things. We have a tutorial that tells you exactly how to do it. Republish a few things. And then you get SliceX's shape mask restricting where the third-party color goes. Okay? So,
that's huge.
So this shot has 2 instances of Color Finale with shape mask. So those lips are pink because of these curves. And if we want to change them, we can make it red. We could do anything you want. And this is just regular old Color Finale. And you can change that to whatever. And the further you need to go, I used to be a retoucher, so the further you need to go, the better that selection needs to be. The closer it is to reality, the easier it is to tell a lie. But those lips look better. And for this one, I just shone a light. That's just a simple circle. That tracks so easily on this clip. And do I have time to show that?
Real quick.
Real quick.
Yeah,
Okay,
he says yes.
All right. So I'm going to drag on C2 SliceX Extras. I'm going to grab Color Finale with Shape Mask. I'm going to drag it on there. Okay. Now, Color Finale comes on blank, as you'd expect, because there's nothing applied yet.
And this Color Finale with shape mask is something that you did based on the tutorial that you just mentioned.
That's not, well, if you don't have Motion and you don't want to do it, they're in the next installer.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so download it on the weekend and you should be fine. So, there we go. I'm just going to select that shape. I'm going to open up the control panel. I'm going to head to curves. I'm just going to push this up a little bit. And maybe I'll just take the blue down a little bit as well. Let's move it up a bit. Okay, I'm just going to change the color a little bit to make it a bit more yellow. I also want to change the blur strength up a bit to make this a bit less ugly, but I mean, it's still bad. I just want to make it obvious what I'm doing. So I've got that selected and I just track it. Cool. That'll track really easily because it's, and yeah, something is definitely going weird with this, but the track's been fine. Okay, it looks like it's jumping around, it's just because the shape is getting ahead, but the track is fine. If you want to shine a light on the side of her head or fix her makeup, that's easy. But it's power windows in Final Cut.
Wow. Thank you, Ian.
So, have you added shape mask to Color Finale motion?
Yep.
Or the other way around?
Yes. We have a tutorial that shows you how to do it, and there is a super secret special bit where you hold down the function key as you launch motion. Don't miss that. But effectively, later, the effect source is normally where you stick effects, but if you make a clone and stick the things on the clone,
Yeah.
done.
So the colour finale people aren't mad at you?
It sells a copy of Color Finale. Why would they be mad?
I don't know. People get mad.
Yeah, ditto Colorista, ditto, in fact, Boris effects, anything you want to, where you might want to restrict something like
who figured out how to
BCC
do
glint.
this? Who figured out how to do that?
Roger and I both independently figured out how to do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I figured it out. I was quite excited, and then Roger said, "Yeah."
Oh, yeah, I did that last week.
Like, great. So,
Thank you very much.
Yes.
We got to go?
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian. He'll be
See you.
around. I'm sure he'd love to answer any more questions.